Triple Nipple Nick, welcome to the video. This one is about why you won't be finding any healthy food in the grocery store. And we're going to cover that, but we're also going to go into the systemic issues about why that won't be the case. And until the system completely changes, anything that looks like the current grocery store system on a mass scale, you're not going to be able to find healthy food there. And I'm going to show you what the alternative is. I'm out here in the mountains, and this is miner's lettuce. This stuff is pretty healthy, but this isn't the same as a vegetable you would find in the grocery store for a lot of reasons. And so let's just start off with why in this current system that's the case. And to give you a little background, I had a farm for a couple years. I've worked on a lot of farms, and I got into that because of my interest in healthy food. And as soon as I realized what I'm about to tell you today, I immediately knew that I could buy the most expensive food in the healthiest grocery store and have a deep understanding about these foods. And forgive me, I'm not going to be looking at the camera. It's going to be bouncing around. Just listen. But as soon as I realized this, I knew that I needed to start visiting farms if I was going to find anything remotely healthy. What you're going to understand at the end of this video is that the gap between McDonald's and the healthiest organic whole foods you can find at Whole Foods or some health food store is actually probably a smaller gap between those healthy whole foods at the grocery store and actual health foods that are the highest quality. So let's get into it just with some examples, just to understand within this current context what's going on and what you're going to find in the grocery store and why it's so different. So first of all, if you go to the grocery store, actually, you know what? We'll get into that later. Let's start out with the systemic problems, because that's going to give you some context, and it's kind of going to be obvious once you understand what I'm talking about. So when you go to the grocery store, you need to understand that within the current capitalistic system, within the regulatory standards that we abide by, it's going to be very hard for a company with soul, some Vital Farms that really cares about the farms, to actually be profitable. And basically, you're not going to find people who actually care about forming a relationship with the land that's beneficial for humans, beneficial for the environment, beneficial for the local ecosystem in the grocery store. And you'll realize that any farmers who are like this, they're not going to even try and compete in that marketplace. If they actually cared, it's not like, oh, but maybe Vital Farms really does care and they've just found a way to compete because they care. It's actually the fact that if you really did care about growing high quality things, you wouldn't even be trying to compete within that game, because there are other ways to do things that are far superior. And so to start off, we need to understand there's a big difference between human beings who, and fundamentally this is what we need growing our food, who actually care about growing quality food for human health, for the well-being of animals, the local animals and plants in the ecosystems and the land. There's a big difference between these humans who form relationships with the land directly by working on it and stewarding it, and companies that are doing the bare minimum to meet some regulatory standard so that they can say their eggs are pasture raised or their crops are organic. And organic is a funny one, because organic certification is kind of a complete joke at this point. It actually started out a little more serious, and now it's just turned into a marketing thing. Basically, all that you know when you're getting something organic is that there's a few chemicals that are the most toxic chemicals that they're not using. And they're using some less toxic chemicals, but they might be using more of them. So it's not even necessarily less harmful. And it doesn't say anything about the systems that they're using and how those systems affect the food. So why you won't find healthy food in the grocery store is because healthy food comes from practices that mimic natural ecosystems, that rely on soil biodiversity, soil health. And you're not going to find this in the grocery store, because anyone who is starting a farm that cares about these things is going to realize that, number one, to compete economically, to actually be able to compete, they're not going to be able to sell in the grocery store. When they're selling something that high quality, it just makes sense to go to directly to the consumer, the type of consumer like you who understands the quality of that produce and who is willing to pay more for it. In the grocery store, they're not going to be able to find their ideal customer who actually cares about those things. And they're going to be competing against other people who are doing things in a much cheaper way, but it's not actually cheaper because of the environmental degradation that it causes, that just is shoving the cost down the line to future generations and directly onto the well-being of those ecosystems. But in our current economic system, it appears cheaper. So it's not like a company or a person who is trying to farm in that way would even try and go to the grocery store. It just doesn't make sense to try and compete there, and to have that kind of impact. And so systemically, whenever we have a certain standard, like pasture raised or 100% grass fed, which I've actually just made 3 videos about how to find the best quality eggs, chicken meat, and beef, and breaking down really what the differences are in detail of the different kind of systems. So if you're more curious, like, oh, this sounds interesting, I do think I want to find the highest quality farming systems, but I don't really know what that looks like, those videos are for you. But anyways, within this context, they're not going to be able to compete. So there's a standard, right? Let's say pasture raised. There's going to be all these companies doing the bare minimum to meet that standard. And so long as we're working within a system of that standard, there being a regulatory standard with minimum requirements to meet it, so long as you're buying something based on any kind of that standard. And here's a lot more Miner's lettuce. It's just everywhere. There's like a whole thing of it all this year, but I gotta talk to you. I'll get it on the way back. So long as you're trying to meet that standard, or so long as you're determining the quality of the food you buy by that standard, it's just going to be whoever can do it the cheapest with the best marketing that's going to win. And so what would the solution look like? The solution is that you have to, first of all, the customer needs to have some base level of awareness. And this isn't too much. Like, if you go watch my last 3 long form videos, you're going to understand everything in way more detail than you need in 30 minutes about beef, eggs, and chicken meat. And then you could go to a farm or understand what a farm's doing based off of that. So maybe in the grocery store, we can have some kind of video or something where we can see into the farm. But then again, what is that video? That video is just a more complex version of that regulatory symbol, pasture raised, or whatever it is that we have in the grocery store. And whatever company it is, it's actually kind of funny. Vital Farms just put out an ad, and it's just so easy to see through. They have hundreds of farms, and they're like, no, we are doing it pasture raised. Look at these clips. Even in the video, they say they have hundreds of farms, but it's like, no, we're doing it pasture raised. Look at this clip of the farm. Here it is. Look, they're outside. Gotcha, they're outside. It's completely in the same breath as mentioning that they actually do have hundreds of farms. So whatever you can put into a video, there's really no correlation between that. You could have some regulations like videos have to reflect the actual farm. We know that in organic farmers are notified weeks before they come to test for chemicals, and then they stop spraying the chemical for a couple of weeks, and then after they test, they leave. We know that. So basically, that's why I'm saying within this grocery store system, maybe there's some new technology, but the system would have to be radically different for us to actually be able to have healthy food in that way. And so because of this, The only way to really have healthy food is, number one, to understand healthy food, understand ecology and what goes in to creating an actual healthy animal and why that is so drastically different from the standards that you find, the highest standards even, that you find in the grocery store. And my last 3 videos will explain that to you. This video would be going on forever. So I know I said we're going to cover the specifics and the more abstract, but now that I'm thinking about it, really this is going to be about the more abstract. We're 10 minutes in. It's too late. Those last three videos are going to give you some concrete examples. So go check those out if that's what you want. But within this context of the abstract, this is why I realized, oh my God, I can't trust anything they're telling me in the grocery store. You need to go to the farm and you need to understand what you're looking for. And what you're looking for is pretty simple. You're just looking for people who care about these things and genuinely care about that and are forming relationships with the land and with the consumers. And in order to establish that, there's just a few questions you need to ask. You just need to, this is exactly what my last 3 videos were covering, but you just need to understand that they should be mimicking natural ecosystems. Ask them within the context of whatever plant or animal they're doing, what is the natural ecosystem that this plant or animal would ancestrally be in? What is the diet, the water, the sunlight, and the movement, and the fresh air that this plant or animal would typically be getting? And of course, most importantly, the soil that the feed for that animal or that plant is growing in. What would that ancestrally look like? And what are we doing to recreate systems that regenerate this ancestrally consistent lifestyle and diet for this plant or animal? What are we doing so that we can build a positive spiral as we produce this plant or animal? That's what regenerative agriculture is. Every time you go around, every time the cattle graze, every time you do another set of crops, the soil is getting better and better instead of worse and worse. What are we doing to create systems that as they run, just by running, they become more and more like the natural systems that they're trying to mimic? And so you just need to briefly educate yourself on what those natural systems might look like, and what kind of practices could mimic that natural system. And then if the farmer system is in an upward spiral or a downward spiral. And everything you find in the grocery store is coming from systems that are in a downward spiral. Even pasture-raised chickens that are doing the bare minimum to meet, they get their 108 square feet outside. Do you think that it benefits them economically to have that soil that is creating the nutrient profile of all the bugs and grasses those chickens are getting? Does it even make sense for that soil to be healthy and to be producing a high amount of high quality bugs and grasses? No. So it's going to be a downward spiral of what's most profitable this quarter. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. I think that should give you guys the idea. Like, there's all these new standards. You can go to the grocery store. There's ice cream for bears. Our ice cream just has clean ingredients. It's just marketing. The eggs in there are factory farmed. The dairy is grass-fed to some degree, not 100%. 100% grass-fed beef. You can find that in the store. Do you know how rare it is to find beef that actually meets the standard of 100% grass-fed and regenerative and pasture-raised? Because it can be 100% grass-fed, but not raised on the pasture. It's indoors, being fed low-quality hay. So even if you can find magically something that meets the highest standards in a grocery store, so even online things like meat ordering places, if you're ordering meat online, you've got to be doing it from a farm. Even someone like Joel Salatin, who, not just endorsing him or anything by any means, although I have read like 5 of his books, even someone like him who really cares about these things and who has done a lot of scaling, what has he realized? What is his business? His business is, he has scaled his farm a lot, probably the most out of anyone doing things the way he is. But not that much. It's hard to get your hands on his meat. But what has he done? He's scaled up on education about farming because he realizes that the only way to actually create healthy food is on a small scale. And so that's what I'm getting at, because everything in the grocery store is part of this large scale system. And the only way to really do things right is on a small scale. On a small scale. Yeah. So that's why you're never going to find healthy food in the grocery store. If you have any questions about this, go below. Any comment with a question. If you say, hey, can you make a video about, I'll make a video about it. So go ahead, like and subscribe. That's it. Thanks for watching. Peace.